Hello and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast for November 15th, 2024. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. It is episode 198 and I have with great pleasure to bring back by popular demand my good friend and business partner, Dexter K. White. He's here to do a little gloating, a little strategy, and a little bit of everything on a Friday afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, Dexter. How are you and what's going on?
I'm good. Thanks for that beautiful intro. I'm recovering from my dialysis because my kidneys turned into raisins about a week ago from consuming too much salt. I'm back. I feel having a little water.
Good. I'm
walking it off.
Yeah, I'm glad you're feeling better.
Too much gloating can be, bad for the soul, but who cares? When I last spoke with you, we were kind of wrapping up the night of the election coverage, and
Right.
Now obviously we're looking at a Republican sweep. We're looking at the Democrats trying to cheat their way back as much as they can in every single election. In House races that take a week to count, even though every district is the exact same size. But California can't get it counted like, even Rhode Island or Florida or Missouri or any other state you can name. But California takes a week to count every single House race. Just cause. And so they stole back a couple. And frankly, I hope the Republicans, after they're having to endure a Pennsylvania recount in the Senate, which is still going to go red, they should initiate the same in Wisconsin and Michigan. That's my take, because there's a lot of asymmetry in an election that honestly Trump brought out old voters and new voters and pulled a lot of people across the party line. And some of the results are still a little suspicious, but we'll take our wins. Frankly, we'll gloat as needed, but change is in the air. And I think it's people who are going to deny that this is a mandate are ridiculous. And it feels a lot like 2016. There's a lot going on even internationally. Like obviously, I've not really been following as closely as I usually do what's happening in Germany, which is to say not much. So I'm even less clued in than usual, but I think something happened in Germany too. Do you want to fill that in for me?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's now we're now in the German Scheiße government. We don't have one actually. So the Scheiße government is gone. The people call the popular euphemism for it is the traffic light coalition, but it's now dead. And it died because of Ukraine funding. It could be more complicated than that. I've heard a lot of rumors, and there's a lot of conflicting stories coming out of Germany. We've got people on the ground, Goats and Guns patrons are on the ground feeding us information behind the scenes and trying to help us make sense of what's happening within how they're reading the German media tea leaves, which they're better at than I am, because you and I are, because we're really good at British and American.
Because they're German.
Well. Yeah, and it's in German, and I don't speak German, other than the fact they think that English is some kind of bastardization thereof, but it's really not. So what's happening in Germany is we've had the coalition fall. I think this is the first German government to actually fall post World War II. Midterm. I may be wrong about that, but it's really kind of unprecedented because the Germans like their stability, and they will live with whatever it is that they're living under, and rather just deal with it until they get to the next election cycle. That's always been my read. My past conversations with Alexander Mercouris, who knows Germany very well, has said this has made this point a lot, and I'll defer to Alex on that. So. But it fell because they ran out of money, and the finance minister refused to give Ukraine any more money. And so Scholz fired him. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, fired him, and Christian Lindner then took his Free Democrats out of the coalition and has now set up a potential snap election. That's where things get murky. I did a thing for our patrons last week with my first blush, my first pass on what I think is going on there, and I'll probably turn that into something more public so that people can work on that. chew on more of the details of it, and I'll keep
So
people up to date, obviously, on Twitter. But the thing is what's going on now is that there's machinations between both wings of the German Uniparty, the CDU, nominally the Republicans, and the SPD, the Democrats, trying to block out their chief rival AfD and figure out how to make the new boss same as the old boss.
right. In other words, if I can summarize, it's as if the established Uniparty would rather sacrifice their country to the Ukraine war than to actually allow their people to vote for what they want.
Yes, absolutely.
So hopefully that summary cannot be applied on this side of the Atlantic, because we managed to vote well enough to not wind up with the same kind of result. Just to that's kind of what I'm thinking is the relevant takeaway.
Well, and it's clear that when you open up the conversation with how many House seats they're trying to steal and how many Senate seats they may have already stolen, that you realize that that's what they're trying to do to bind President-elect Trump down with a Congress that he can't work with. So that brings us to another interesting point, which is, okay, so if you want to drill into those House seats and Senate seats before we go farther than that, I think that would
frankly, I don't, in the sense that the Republicans have crossed 219 definitely, but it's really more about 221. It is what it is. Check Real Clear Politics or Decision Desk on whatever day you listen to this to see, if the screaming's over. I mean, the Senate is decided. It's just that the Democrats are going to force a recount in Pennsylvania and then try to count the votes of illegals that they found in a barn. And I just don't think they're going to get away with it, given some of the court decisions before the election, even in Pennsylvania. I just think they're going to be stuck with the result, and so be it. Regardless, the Republicans are in charge of the Senate. Thune is going to be the majority leader, and that's that. Obviously, in the Electoral College, Trump got 312, and it's just a curb stomp, and that's obviously going to proceed. Maybe we'll have, a couple, and I hope we do actually have a couple of grandstanding idiot, faithless electors, because I think we need to have a continuous conversation about the way the Democrats pretend they're all about the rules, and then at every single turn break them or apply them in the most ridiculous way to only benefit themselves, and then act like they're standing up for truth and reason and apple pie and whatever else. And, red, white, and blue, butt plugs or whatever the value system they claim is, real America. What? Sorry, did I say that out loud?
Anyway. Yeah, you did. That's okay. You're outside the voice. We are live.
If this is your first time, anyway. This is the between the first and second. It takes the second cup of coffee to actually introduce self-regulation. I apologize. So anyway,
well, no, I think it's an important point to remind ourselves, and it's what we were all worried about going into the election, right? We were all worried that they were going to do the industrial strength cheating, they were going to do all of this stuff. I mean, everybody was feeling it. I don't know about you, but I put 5 pounds on stress eating and coming into this election. And oy, my poor vocal cords from all the cigars I smoked. But interestingly, I just want to, the point that's I think come up, and I think can't be stressed hard enough, is that Lara Trump was on the ground with the right people and the poll watchers and the lawyers and everything else to stop that, along with the the court cases that went against them. And I think that may be good enough. And I don't even know that we have to entertain ideas of, well, who stopped the steal and did this happen, or it may be as simple as, no, they tried and they were prepared.
And God bless the metrosexual Eagle Scout. Scott Pressler is literally, I mean, whatever you want, dude, just ask for it. Because that guy is just, when I never knew he was an Eagle Scout, and as a former Boy Scout, that actually means something to me. In that tells me something about the guy's ability to stay on target, that people who don't know what that era, at least in scouting has changed a lot, and especially in the last few years. But like, I didn't get Scott Pressler, honestly. I'd see little things on YouTube or on Twitter, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm in," and it was kind of like, okay, this guy is. I just was like, okay, good luck, dude. And then like in the rearview mirror, when I actually got a better accounting of what he did, I was like, oh, of course he did that. Like, of course, like a former Eagle Scout just was like, oh no, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to stop. And there's no failure's not an option. And I'm going to register 180,000 Amish, and that's what's on my board. So that's what I'm going to do. And God bless him. Like, I mean, he seriously delivered probably, the presidency and a Senate seat. So, and ultimately I do think Pennsylvania is going to be delivered, red, just because I think the gap is too much. And I think their attempts at like 4 a.m. like overseas ballots that voted 100% Democrat are not going to be allowed.
Right. And we're not going to have to stomach saying, well, it could have possibly been true. Like, no, we're not. And that's another thing. It's like this election result was strong enough. And I think we said this on election night. We did our spaces. We said, look at Florida as an example of what happens when you clean up the election system. We go from a state that was, being gerrymandered and
well, we're still being gerrymandered, but that's a national, that's not an election issue. That's a national break.
Gerrymandered may have been the wrong word. I was searching for a different word. We'd be manipulated into becoming a purple state through electioneering and all this other stuff. And then we clean it all up and we now have the best elections system. I think, one of the best election systems in America. And here's a state of 30 electoral votes, so the third largest state in the union by electoral vote count. And we were done and the state was called by 8:01 with 95% of the vote counted. It was just done. It was easy and auditable, and it's traceable. And you can do a hand recount of all the ballots that were cast in Florida, and you're going to get a number within 0.05%. And that's the error.
Right.
And that's what's important to understand. And that could be exported to the rest of the country. And I really enjoyed the Florida Secretary of State, tweaking Arizona on election night, saying, if you're having problems with your election system, we here in Florida are here to help. We can show you how we do it.
I mean, the history of ridiculing Florida back, so, we're both long time. I mean, I'm a native, but in 2000, the whole hanging chad, which was the paper tab, ballots that we were using, and to be fair, the punch through paper kind of like data card ballot system was also like correctly, theorized. Like it was like the attempt was, hey, let's have a mass countable high-speed counting technology that allows, retaining of the ballots for review. And, we'd used this system for at least 10 or 15 years, and there had never been a problem. But the Democrats in 2000 turned it into this fiasco because this is the history of the depth of their lust for power for no reason other than they want power. Like the hanging chad thing, like in many ways was total bullshit. Like they were in those audit rooms punching them through while no one was looking. Go look, it's how do you know they voted both? And it's like, no, that's a Bush ballot and you're full of shit. But this is how we have to engineer systems so lying Democrats can't sit in like a room in full view and tell us, like, even on Scantron style ballots, which is like the bubble in with a pen or pencil type voting system that we have now, even then they'll exit out and like they literally can't be trusted. So you have to design a system where what we have now in Broward County, where we had several more generations of ridiculous problems after we fixed the mechanism of voting, i.e. we switched to Scantron. Then we had a series of ridiculous supervisors of elections who were doing things like destroying the ballots against court order. And, we fixed all that. And even though we are now, I think Broward is the bluest county in a very red state, and it's a very blue county. Like it is as blue a county as a county you'll find in like maybe not Massachusetts or Delaware, but like it is not a Broward's blue, and it's staying blue, I think, for quite a while, unfortunately. Right. But we have a reasonably good supervisor of elections. We've fixed all this nonsense, and the system works because you go in, even in our early voting, it works the same exact way. They use the same machine. You go into your booth, fill out your card, blah, blah, blah. Then you walk up to a scanner, and you, not the vote, not the employee, poll watcher, whatever they are, you physically feed your Scantron card into a reader, and it says thank you, and then you get your little sticker and you leave. And so and as it scans it, it drops your ballot right into a lockbox. And then as that lockbox fills up, they tag it, stick it in the corner, stack it to the ceiling, and then the cops come and like lock the place down. And then they move them all to the counting facility, but they've got a pre-count ready to go. And that's why it works. And it works the same way on election day. Like all those ballot counting drop box, they're not, I shouldn't call them a drop box, the ballot scanner deposit box literally knows what the result of the election is, like when the polls close, with plus or minus a couple of percent, and then we rescan the ballots anyway. So it's a very good system, and more to the point, we hold on to the ballots for 90 days in case of any blah blah blah, and then once everything's certified, we shred the ballots and move on. And that's just a reasonably good system. Like there's things as a tech nerd that I could improve, but like if we can get the whole country on this, and we can, like it's going to be a huge, like all the voter ID states went to Kamala, and almost the entirety of Kamala's states are no voter ID states. Like Massachusetts and Connecticut are too normie to put up with no ID. Like they're just too waspy. So you have to show ID to vote, I think, in both those states. But but every other state she won is a no voter ID state. So this could have been an even bigger election. So
that was the point I was trying to make. It's like Florida, coming. I mean, neither of us. I mean, we're old hat at projecting elections and what we think is going to happen and blah 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 blah. And I'm not a native in Florida, but I've been here since I'm 18, so I've been here 38 years. You've been here all your life. You're far more politically astute going back into your earlier days.
I definitely with Florida politics, but that's
sure you understand Florida politics far better than I do. And I would, in general,
and that's a cookie not worth eating. But anyway,
hey, we just had to shut me off from talking about the German Scheisse politics too. So it's the same thing. So on my end, it's a cookie you really don't want to eat, folks.
The Florida cookie isn't made of poop, but anyway,
it may be maybe a sugar cane. It may give you type 2 diabetes, but whatever. But my point being is that Florida is now. Neither of us were expecting a plus 13 or whatever we wanted, a plus 13, plus 14 in Florida. We plus 7, plus 8 makes perfect sense. No. Then we really find out that like Florida on a normal year is probably plus 7 red, and in a particular year like this was plus 13. And to me, that was a harbinger to all the other states. What if everybody else comes up plus 3 to plus 5 more than what they were than they were expecting? Yeah, this is going to be a landslide. And if we had voter ID in all those other states, this would have been 400 electoral votes. This would have been a Reagan second term like thing, like a landslide.
Yeah.
And I think this is, I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, I'm going to lay it out there. I think the country's 60-40 red. I do, and that's an opinion. I don't give a shit.
Among actual voters who vote,
among actual voters who have heartbeats, who are alive, and who are legal, and who are willing to show their ID to vote, and everything else. The country is really 60-40 red, and that's where we are.
I would push back on that with the following caveat: like we vote for a variety of reasons, one of which is we detest the person we think is ahead. And so like a lot of people are pulled off the sidelines when things have gone too far. And the Democrats force all of us to live in a media environment, which is rapidly coming to an end. And we'll maybe talk about that later. But they force us to live in a media environment where they constantly claim that their delusional, marginal, extremely marginal 7 or 8 sigmas out the curve view of reality is like the dead center. And nobody believes it. This isn't even oh, I thought. It's no, nobody believes it. And then they just sit there and all right, they've got the, whatever, the health secretary or the nuclear waste secretary and the, who are trans. And then it's everyone just rolls their eyes and move on with their day. But when they start doing things where they're okay, this is the new reality and here's what we're going to do with it. We're wait, whoa, you're not doing that. You're not and the voting intensity for negation is a big factor. And I think Florida's extra, I too thought it was going to be an 8-point race. Anyone's calling Florida purple. I was you're lying to yourself, because you're not lying to me, because what you're saying is so stupid. It's not a lie. It's just, you seem crazy and you might have hit your head. Florida's not purple. Go fuck yourself. And they really believed it. And I was all right, dude, whatever, take a walk.
Whatever.
But I think the extra 6 points is really explained by revulsion intensity on things that have to do with not just trans, but other anti-reality issues. And that move people who aren't as political and aren't red. I agree that 60% of the population, as opposed to whatever the 53 Trump polled in the popular vote, are much more based in reality than the other 40%, and only about 25% of the electorate are shitbird crazy, but they are actually consistently shitbird crazy. So, we have to manage this until we can get them all institutionalized.
I mean, and I think and this is maybe a good way to shift the conversation a little bit and to say, look, now where do we go from here? Because what happened to a lot of people who are shitbird crazy is that they woke up on Wednesday morning with a massive realignment of reality versus their worldview. And I don't believe that most of them are waking up going, oh my God, I was wrong. I think, though, you can say that there's probably 10% of those 25% that are looking at the world going a little differently.
Well, no, it's the 10% who sit on top of the 25% with a 5% pure Democrat partisan buffer. So you take the 25 plus the 5, you got your 30, right? And then, you've got that the people who put the signs that say, in this house, we believe that science is a vote and, women can have a penis, or whatever those dumb signs say. You have those people who are literally just conformists, right? The places where the women make all the decisions in the household and the husband's just given up and he's on Ambien and doesn't care anymore. And those households are not based in understanding politics or reality. They're simply based on keeping up with the Joneses. And it's, the proverbial Overton window analysis. And those people are now experiencing the real taste of ridicule to the point where they're switching. And, these are the permanent seesaw, group in American politics. But even if all of them are still voting blue, that whole pile is now at about 45 in my view. So, I'm not going to go 60, but I think 55% of people. And again, the problem with Republicans, they always misread the win. Everybody misreads the win. Every single win in American politics is a big component of people who are I think the other guy sucks so bad that I'm going to get off the couch and go vote. And every winning party and every political analyst who's involved in a winning campaign, American politics is far more a random walk than a strategic, win. And certainly a strategic win because of a genius strategic plan, commanded by an actual individual. So, right now we need to focus less on, in terms of what we should talk about in the podcast, we understand the Democratic fuckery. Now we have to kind of talk, I think, about the rhino fuckery in the Senate.
Absolutely.
That's coming. I did not expect Scott to win, majority leader. I thought it was a nice move. And I thought it was notable that although I guarantee you Trump wanted Scott, that he didn't come out and publicly endorse. And that implies some horse trading behind the scenes. Like Cornyn was worse, but they're both, Mitch lieutenants, right? They're both Mitch's bitches. But Thune has already come out and, said enough things that I can't even conceive of Cornyn saying. He could be lying, and I wouldn't put it past him to lie. But it is what it is,
Right. No, it's a fair point. Like it's a good question as to what deal was made behind the scenes, and I think that part of, and we really do have to worry about the rhinos, and Murkowski and Graham have already come out, for example, against Matt Gaetz being attorney general, for example. Like there's all this, there's going to be all this crazy nonsense. And the real question here is, does John Thune want to be Senate Majority Leader for 2 years in order to get the gold watch, put the cap on his career, and go home? And, what did they have to, or is he, committed to being an obstructionist of Trump's agenda in the Senate? Well, okay, that's
those are the same thing.
They are. I'm not, but at the same time, he may have cut a deal with Trump in such a way to allow most of the cabinet through, and this is there's a point I want to make, but I don't want to make it right now about where we could wind up with this. But let's just talk about, getting rid of Marco Rubio out of the Senate, moving him up to Secretary of State, for example, how that dovetails in with the cabinet picks and what's going on here. There is some horse trading going on.
Yeah, I think to cut to the chase on, so a bunch of people right now, it's Friday, November 15th as we record this, a bunch of people who frankly are not very serious have been talking about Laura Trump being appointed to Rubio's seat. Laura Trump did a great job taking over the RNC, far better than anyone thought she would. She's a smart cookie, and she's people. She delivers. And she's not dumb. She's married to Eric, not to Don Jr. She's not like some fish lip stripper. Sorry.
Not while I'm trying to get a drink, dude.
The guy's got his, anyway, I'm not even going to go there. But Eric's, whatever. Eric's much more normal. Anyway, I like Laura Trump, but I think it's an extremely bad look to put your daughter-in-law in as, it's just hopefully Trump has better sense than that. That said, what's going to really happen, is I don't care what horse trading you think's going on with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is not going to appoint Laura Trump. That's too. That's
I was.
He's going to appoint Ashley Moody. That's who it's going to be. And it's either going to be Moody or Jimmy Patronis. I think Jimmy Patronis is going to be. So Florida has never put a lieutenant governor. One has Buddy McKay became governor, but I believe he became governor after he lost the race that he was, after Childs died. I think McKay became governor for a brief period before Jeb won. But I think it was actually, I think Lawton died after the election, if I'm remembering this right.
I can't.
Anyway, but Buddy McKay is the only lieutenant governor to ever have made a serious chance of winning the governorship after serving. So the idea that our current lieutenant governor Nunez is obviously going to be the person replacing DeSantis, I'm like, okay, but that's literally never happened in Florida history. Right. And knowing what I know about the Florida Republican Party, Jimmy Patronis, who's been the CFO and his term limited out in 2 years, my bet's on him. And say what you want. I think Ashley Moody's a much better Senate choice, although they both are fine choices. But I think Patronis would be a better. I don't think Ashley Moody would lose the governor's race, but if I were just picking optimal person for each seat, and I thought like DeSantis thinks, and I had the Florida Republican GOP, round table that I know he has, I think Moody goes Senate and Patronis goes governor. and Ron goes to whatever. And now let me say that I think that Gates, if recessed appointed, will serve 2 years, because that's how long he would serve as a recess appointment, as AG, just to be clear.
Right.
And then with the next Congress, they would have to approve him. So barring some giant Republican sweep in the Senate, we assume that Gates would not be approved. And he's certainly not going to be approved after what we assume he's going to do in the 2 years he has as AG. Mm-hmm. At that point, Ron DeSantis is done being governor, and Ron DeSantis will definitely clear a Senate approval, in the 80s, even with maximum Democrat petulance. There's literally nothing in DeSantis's record, credible or made up nonsense, from Loomer universe that would the guy's just eminently qualified to be AG. I mean, he's a jag. I mean,
right. So there's a couple. I want to stop you there for just a second.
That's my view of how this is going to go. The only thing I want to add to that is this is just funny, and I don't think it's literally in play, but I feel like the one way you get Gates approved as AG is literally just threaten to appoint him senator. And DeSantis and Gates are actually pretty close. And I could see DeSantis appointing Gates as senator and then just like force them to eat lunch with him every day. And I think they'd fucking approve him to AG because they don't want to deal with him. It's like getting him out of the legislative branch is actually probably something everyone in the Senate wants, even though they don't have to deal with him as a House member. But I love Matt Gaetz, but I know these people don't like him. So that's my 2 cents.
So there's 2 things. One, I want you to go back and tell us, because I don't even know this, who Ashley Moody is. That's one. Let's start there.
She's held, I think, a couple statewide offices, but she's former AG of Florida. And she was also, she's a rock star. She was also very pro-Trump in the defense when all these various things were happening. Trump loves her. So it wouldn't be, she's current attorney general, actually. And she's been, she's digging in on this FEMA stuff with the Trump signs, because even though that was mostly, I think, a North Carolina story, it was also a story here where they were denying FEMA aid to houses with Trump signs. Right. So,
okay, that's all Florida AG. The other one is the following, which I was talking to a friend of mine last night who's got who's up the food chain a little bit, and he's like, the bad blood between Trump and DeSantis is real, and it may even preclude them, ever having a working relationship. So it's something to think, to watch carefully for evidence of, is what I'm going to say here. I'm not completely convinced of that, but I'm more than willing to entertain.
I agree. I half agree. It's definitely not Trump went too far with certain things that and some of which were not even clear, how much was Trump, but a lot of it, frankly, was Laura Loomer went off the rails against DeSantis. And although I don't, obviously none of it was actually effective, but she crossed some lines. They said some things about Casey DeSantis where I'm like, dude, you don't get to say stuff like that about a man's wife after she's gone through cancer, or even if she hasn't, frankly. But there was just stuff that was like, dude, take a walk, Right. And, I think Laura Loomer's been pushed out of any sphere of influence pretty commandingly. And it happened. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I think she had her place, and for a while I was a fan, but when she went the way she did against DeSantis, I was like, okay, so she doesn't really understand the long game at all. She's really just a Trump supporter, and that's fine. But she should just stop pretending to be part of a long-term, movement for change. She does not see the horizon, right? We have a 4-year administration here. And, when I say we, it's kind of a stretch because I'm not even a Republican, but the what we have ahead of us is it's, don't make it a lame duck administration before it has to be. We have a short timeline here. Yeah, I don't know if on the DeSantis Trump thing, I agree that there's some real resentment there. I don't know how much it can't be overcome by pragmatism.
Well, that's what we hope, is that everybody kind of stands up and acts like grown-ups and goes, this is strategically what's best for the country, what's best for this and what's best for that. And
consider
and
at the 2-year point that most of the enfant terrible Trump run through the China shop will be over in 2 years. He will have done all the things that he wants to do. And at that point, Gates will have, shot his, the powder will no longer be dry. And Gates will be doing whatever he's doing. But at that point, you could, Trump understands they're not repealing the 22nd Amendment or whatever. I mean, Trump certainly knows that he's not physically capable of doing a third term. So at that point, I think Trump is going to basically be like, let's get Ron teed up and keep this thing going, because there's really no one else on the bench of the Republican Party that can really continue the success that I presume is possible, at least if Trump gets his cabinet. So at that point too, don't forget, whatever Gates will have done, it will have been pilloried in the press as extremist, as this or that. And you honestly could pitch DeSantis as a return to normalcy, which, would be the ultimate Overton window cram down on the left. If we could literally get them beg to put DeSantis in as AG and then do 2 years and then run for president, and that's
it's hilarious.
You want to come up with funny schemes. That one actually works because the actual pieces, because at that point, most of the AG, craziness will be over, or the cases will be teed up, and DeSantis can come in and manage them. And at that point, well, dude, if there's 2 years of Matt Gaetz as AG, they're going to be begging for Ron DeSantis. I'm serious.
I know. No, I get it. I get it, and it's funny. And this part of the reason you and I spoke, we're doing some theorizing yesterday about this, and let's talk about the whole recess appointment gambit here. I see. You and I have, I think, slightly different opinions on this, but just to say, I think Trump goes full hog, and I don't care at this point about what's propriety. I see Trump as I don't care if it's propriety, if it's a good look or not at this point. I'm getting my cabinet, and that's the end of it. And when even when a milquetoast guy like Thomas Massey's like, oh no, I have 2 words for you: recess appointment. He's AG. Fucking suck it up. When did Thomas Massey, of all people, become that guy, right? There's something serious going on behind the scenes here. But I understand that if you don't want to ruffle too many feathers in the Senate, you don't take their ability to go through the motions and act all self-important away from them.
Here's the thing. This administration is tooled specifically, as has been taped out so far. It's tooled specifically to remove every last vestige of the last 16 years of Obama's persistent sabotage of the United States of America. And people might not realize that because Trump is such a master troll. But the reality of this cabinet he's putting together, this is an administration that doesn't care about legislation. They don't need any. So if it's pass a budget, assholes, and that's about it, because what they're going to do is going to be executive branch action. And it's also going to be the fulfillment of the Chevron doctrine,
Jarkissi.
Excuse me?
Jarkissi. The SEC Star Chamber court cases.
Right. Well, that's not even, dude, the list is way longer. And I think people need to understand that the gambit, so recess appointments is a enumerated power. And so when the Democrats try to impeach Trump for using an enumerated power, they're not even going to get on the docket. The Supreme Court's going to be 9-0. It's hey, read the document. That is the prime. They're going to be well, U.S. code, blah, blah. It's dude, it's in the Constitution. If you're really going to try to impeach, you're going to impeach a president over using an enumerated power in the U.S. Constitution because you don't think the Constitution is law?
Right.
There's stupid and then there's big stupid. It's oh, Trump's going to do something untoward. Oh, really? Is he going to be rude too? Anyway. So
can we put that shit on pay-per-view, please, and balance the budget? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
and then the other thing is, though, we have a decent amount of time here, so it's possible that it's not a fully recess appointed cabinet. It's just that Gates is recess appointed. Like there's lots of different ways this can happen. So
sure,
we should just watch. I don't think Trump wants to recess appoint his whole cabinet. That would be stupid and would also make him look.
But the two most controversial picks here, or three most controversial picks, would be Gates, Gabbard, and RFK.
I mostly agree, but the thing with RFK is interesting because let's talk about Secretary Kathleen Sebelius for a second, who was head of HHS during Obama. Former governor of Kansas, executive experience, $12 billion budget, blah, blah, blah. But why was she really appointed? Well, she was Kansas insurance commissioner for 6 years. Okay. She fought Blue Cross. She managed a $10 million budget and did all that. Great. But like, that's it. And she's a lawyer, member of the Tri-Lawyers Association, but her what does she know about healthcare? No one ever said that. They were just like, oh, she's a governor. Oh, blue governor, red state, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Right. But Kathleen Sebelius was in charge when the Obamacare website launched and literally didn't have a way to take your information. Like, it was unfinished software paid for 2 orders of magnitude more than a similar piece of software. And I'm a first party witness to knowing that they never built a cart and then they launched and pretended they didn't know how it worked. So I'm not quoting anybody. I was there. I saw it. Right. And like that's called just unbelievable mismanagement. So, if she was qualified to be head of HHS, so too is RFK, because RFK is a very successful trial attorney, whether you like it or not. And listen, a lot of Republicans, I get why they might not be like super jazzed about an environmental lawyer who ran 30 years of success against companies you guys probably had stock in. But saying he's unqualified, like, do you know who he sued half the time? Like, he's as qualified as Sebelius. Now, he hasn't managed a state level budget, and HHS is a state level budget. So his executive experience is light for a cabinet member, sure. But I got news for you. Like, most of HHS's complexity is a much smaller part of the budget. It's like the Medicare budget is just a giant money dispersion machine, right? Like, they're just sending checks to hospitals. So what they really do is the stuff that RFK, like it or not, has a decent amount of experience with. And like, sorry, elections have consequences, and that's who Trump wants. I think Gabbard, I like her, but she has no intelligence community experience. And some people might say exactly that's why, but the DNI is not that old a position. Right. So, I mean, it's a post 9/11 position. People, act like it's something set up by George Washington. It's not. If Trump wants to reinvent it, that's his prerogative. So that's what I would say about Tulsi. And I mean, who was the third you said was unqualified?
Gates.
Allegedly. Oh, Gates is totally qualified, though. That's the biggest. I mean, is he a lawyer that ran some, but like, I don't know. Like,
no, Gates' personality alone makes him qualified for friggin' AG. And in many ways, that's part of what you can say about Gabbard at DNI. And, she does have House committee experience in these areas, foreign affairs. And I think she was on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And was she on the intelligence?
I would have preferred to see her in like charge of the VA myself, but because I think
we've discussed that.
Yeah. Look, she's got a little light of a resume. I mean, honestly, I think the Senate approval process might be interesting for her. Like I'd like to hear exactly how, like people will grandstand, like, oh, I'm on the Armed Services Committee and blah, blah, blah. And, and they'll ask her tough questions. I'd like to see how she does. I mean, I'd like to see her in a position in this government. And, The one thing I haven't parsed, and with you or anyone else, is how much I think Trump has like the 5 or 6 appointments he really wants mixed in with ones that are bait. I do not think Gates is a bait appointment at all. I'm all in on Gates,
Right.
and I think I'll put it this way: I disbelieve in its entirety all the allegations against him. So to frame it, like if you think those are true and you think I'm crazy, that's fine. I don't believe them. I think they made them all up. Like, I think the guy walked through a party with a beer and probably flirted with some girls and then left. That's what I believe. You could be like, you're crazy. Fine. But when unsourced allegations come out on the timeline they came out at against him from the people they came from, I'm sorry, I'm at 100%. Not 3 nines, not 4 nines. I disbelieve it. So put that on the table, take it or leave it. And I've watched him time after time litigate against people like Garland at a level that is better than any prosecutor I've ever seen. And I watch a lot of stupid court TV, thanks to John Seth making me. I mean, when he gets a little blood, dude, he set up Garland and just crushed him time and time. There's like hit reels of him just ripping Garland. And I don't know, man, I think the guy's a perfect choice.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, for Gabbard, again, I agree with you. Her resume is light, but I think this is one of those moments where you need this is one of those moments, one of those appointments where Trump is putting out somebody he trusts and is saying, okay, this is a stretch, but I think you're capable of handling this job. And it's one of those moments where you say, okay, are you ready for the big time? Yes, I am. Okay, well then go out and do it. And if you fail, well, okay, you fail. But this is going to be that moment. I think it's one of those things where we have to dare to allow people to give them the opportunity to overachieve. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the left wing has, and has created this mythology around the DNI position. I mean, let's remember why it was formed. It was formed because, allegedly 9/11 was a huge surprise. It came out of nowhere that no one could see because our respective intelligence communities were siloed. And so the DNI's job is to literally work through the silos, force communications where they observe it's clearly not happening, come up with all these teamwork kind of like multi-mission, multi-agency, whatever they, little not think tanks, but whatever they call them, like all these like little task forces and whatever, so that we don't miss the obvious big picture. That's the DNI's job. The DNI's job is basically traffic control. They're not really about drilling down and telling the CIA what to do. They're saying, hey, what have you done? And what is FBI doing? And what is DIA doing? And what like cool stuff is the National Reconnaissance Office capable of these days? Did you know they had this satellite? Have you guys used it yet? And that's kind of like, that I don't know, it doesn't take like some super specific set of skills to have like executive functioning and being like, guys, forest trees, it's and then be like, in the Bush era, Bush was demanding of what he wanted to see. So, especially post 9/11, and I don't think Obama ever was. Obama was someone who wanted someone to come up with a cute collage of the available stuff and, present it to him. I think that was also probably a fair description of Trump in his first term. I think this term's going to be different. I think Trump's going to be an information demander, which is like he tells the DNI, go get me information on X, Y, and Z, and I want to see it in tomorrow's brief. Right. Maybe I'm overestimating how much curiosity.
No, I mean, I spoke with Ari Johnson the other day, and Johnson reminded me, he's like, look, of the past presidents, Trump was the most engaged with his with the president's daily brief, as asking questions and being the most curious, actually. And it's like, and it was blowing open this idea that Trump is an incurious person who just sits around and drinks Diet Coke and watches Fox News all day. That there's that, that image of him, which a lot of us share, and I've been guilty of believing that at times. There's another side to that, and I think you're correct that in this particular moment in time, given the structure of the cabinet, again, let's talk about the bigger picture of what this cabinet is actually talking about. And I'm glad you brought up the point about it being, look, we're here to clean up all the agencies first and let the legislature do their thing for the next 2 years, and we're not even going to fight them on anything. They're going to play their reindeer games. And
pass a budget on playing. Look, Republicans will get a tax cut through under Trump, so they can sit over there and do whatever they do. And why not just pass a budget for once in your life without a continuing resolution and a bunch of bullshit? Like, why not do your first duty under the damn Constitution?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So. But then let's now look at the shape of the cabinet from a couple of different, from a larger perspective, which is that we have the foreign policy side of things, and it all looks similar, but not the same as what we had under Biden and previous. Oh, they're all neocons, or at least neocon adjacent in some way. And then we have all of these domestic, the domestic cabinet positions, focus cabinet positions, which are actually all of the people who are dissidents to that foreign policy, drilling in order to, in my mind, unfuck the information flow towards the president so that he can implement a foreign policy of his choosing. So the way I see it is like, we've talked about this, and I think the Latin America angle on Marco Rubio, for example, as Secretary of State, is a very powerful one. And I think Trump is putting together a bunch of Israeli hawks to go into some intense negotiations with the Russians and the Persians and say, okay, let's hash this shit out. And you're not going to go in there with a bunch of panty waist peaceniks in negotiations with those two very, very shrewd negotiating, groups of people we know are shrewd negotiators, i.e. the Russians and the Persians, over something as important as the Middle East. Like, you have to go in there with a little bit of crazy on your side, but it's not John Bolton crazy, and it's not Ukrainian Jews like Newland and Blinken. It's a different look. It's similar, but it's not the same.
But I think you're drilling down way too. So I don't see it this way. I see it differently. I think Trump's attitude is big picture, 10,000 foot on the kinetic wars, right? I think Trump is very pro-Israel. I think anyone who expected him not to be is just that doesn't understand how to read words, perhaps. I think the Democratic Party is not as, I think the United States and Israel have common interests and a common bond that is not going to go away based on people's reaction to October 7th. And exactly. I think that Trump realizes, and separately, he's an advocate for, Israel's continued existence, which I don't think is controversial. And I think, though, he understands, separate from there is personal dislike between him and Netanyahu for specific reasons where Trump doesn't appreciate disloyalty. But I think they're not political problems, but that could make them more intractable, frankly. And I think that he wants to see, the violence stop. And it's also convenient that Israel's basically done. There's not really much left to do in Gaza. And so I think Trump sees the light at the end of the tunnel there. And the same thing with Ukraine. I don't think Trump has a highly principled, we pushed NATO's boundaries too far reasoning. I just don't. I think he thinks that disrupting global trade in fertilizer and wheat and corn and sunflower oil and all this stuff is so obviously bad that, it should stop. I don't think it's really, and I think also, frankly, I do not give this, I'm not as charitable towards the Iranians and the Russians as you are. I see them as, pulling their own schemes for their own reasons. And I like a kind of dumb analysis from our side of the table again that isn't mixed with a bunch of people who are possibly on the other side. Like let's to clarify, like we have a lot of people in this administration who are probably getting some form of largesse from the Ukrainian funding. I can't prove that. That's an unsourced allegation. It's just a feeling. The number of people who have Ukrainian family, who have, Ukraine is pretty corrupt. And this is, from someone who many times, and I will say it again here, is not supportive of Russia in any way. Like in this context of, we could talk about 2014 another time, but 2022 onward, like I just don't agree with anything that's been done. I don't think anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. Sure. But the United States, like, we have so many people who I suspect are literally personally benefiting from these things. And this is totally at a different level than your typical military industrial complex concerns where, oh, look, this guy's going to go be CEO of Lockheed when he gets out of here. That's a whole nother feature of our thing. But I think Trump wants an end to the war. He wants, big picture, an economy that's functioning the way it should be with mega inputs. Like we can't disrupt the flow of fertilizer in this world for what? Eastern Ukraine? Are you kidding me? Like a bunch of dilapidated factories that some people for some reason think are some great capital prize to seize. Like it's about the commodities. It's not about the finishing, like what factory in Ukraine do you think is like 20 years in date? Like nothing there is worth fighting over. What's worth fighting over is, another pile of lithium because we're too stupid to mine our own that we have a ton of. We have a ton of rare earths. We have a ton of oil. We have a ton of everything. Our problem is Democrats, and
our problem is Europeans. And when you say Democrats, I say Europeans because it's the Europeans that are pushing the Democrats to do this in order to destroy us. I'm sorry. I firmly believe that.
It's been national policy in the United States. And this is not a terrible policy, but the problem is it's been married with a whole bunch of fake environmental policy, so stated by the Democrats, at least. It's been our policy to allow the world to provide us with the marginal unit of any commodity that is in any way scarce, up until we ever break ground on ours. And that's not a dumb policy for a hegemon to take, right? Like, hey, let the Arabs pump oil. Their oil comes out of the ground a little easier than ours. Let them do it. Let them deplete their reserves. Let the Russians deplete their reserves of kaolin or whatever, all the different components of fertilizer that they have comparative advantage. And let them do it. Let them sell it in the marketplace. The problem is, that strategy of like saving our stash for last and thus, ensuring the longest, dominance of the United States, a good strategy ultimately. But when you sell it to the public as you are protecting the environment, it gets a lot of people's brains calibrated wrong. And, this is separately, is your end game that we're going to be the last man standing in a world where everything else has been sucked dry and now we're the only source of these things? Is that the world you really want to build at the horizon? Because that's a pretty fucked up apocalyptic view of things. And yet that is literally the through line of like the Clinton administration, the Obama administration. This is literally what they talk about behind closed doors. So, and then the last part of that is you let these other people with control of large piles of commodities sell into the global market in order to deplete themselves. And then you also want to sanction them. Like you got to pick a lever, right? You either let them, be the dumb, low profit provider of a commodity. It's like, yeah, Russia, hey, here's $57 barrel oil. Have fun, get rich, and you just think we can't get this shit out of the ground for 80. Ha ha. But then at the same time, when you're like, oh no, we're going to stop you from selling it. It's like, dude, pick a lane. Like, which is your power policy? And
again, where this comes back to who doesn't have those things. I get the American perspective on this. This is why I'm like, why would we engage in this policy well past its use by date, as you just laid out? Why are we still doing this? It's because our partners in Europe don't have any of those things, and they want what's over there. They want that stuff. They want the next 100 years of cheap oil and gas and tungsten and uranium and everything else coming out of there. And there's also real, honest to God, internecine old blood feuds here.
Well, that strategy also, I mean, my conclusion is not the same on things that are truly more scarce, right? Like tungsten's a great example. The world is not drowning in tungsten. And for whatever we need it for, like, it gets to be there are zero-sum game commodity fights happening for sure. But oil is not one of them, right? Oil is about the marginal barrel of production getting to the market in the marginal unit of time. That's what that fight is, right? Like, given 6 months, we can change our regulations and be like, yeah, there's no summer blend. Fuck that. It's over. Like, right. and you could see a lot of that happen during Trump proactively. And I suspect we will. I think a lot of things that are, just pretentious, things that are meant to bind us down as an economy by those who are really not in for America's success. So much of our regulatory state is that. And they're not things that were ever about the environment or whatever they allege that. They're just about slowing down like the dominance of, free market capitalism, because there's a group of people in the world who cannot handle that being successful, right? These are the people who are still trying to figure out what they think about China, because China's like, dude, like, Maoism and Marxism aren't exactly the same. We have some ideas, and the purists over in Europe are still thinking they're going to dictate to China how communism works. And I'm like, you guys really think like everyone listens to you, don't you? But they don't.
And this is exactly my point. And this is why everything I've seen so far out of Trump's cabinet appointments, and, we haven't even talked about, Vivek and Elon Musk over at Doge, which is hilarious, about what the actual end goal of those, of these executive level actions are going to be, which is by unfucking the U.S. economy from a regulatory perspective and cutting waste and spending. It's making it's undoing all of this friction, this loss due to friction within our economy, to bring us down low in order to build quote unquote Europe up. And it's just dumb. And it's over. And then they wanted us to fight a fucking war with the Russians on their behalf. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this is clearly. I can also tell you that looking at the post-election environment now, you're seeing even more strenuous rhetoric coming out of the Europeans that it's time to break with the United States over defense policy. So this is clearly. They're now into the mode of, okay, it's over. We know what's going to happen, and we want to build our own military industrial complex, and we want to take care of ourselves, and the hell with the United States, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, good, your terms are acceptable. We're tired of fucking paying for it. And oh, by the way, we're going to get rid of the tariffs on that we put in place to help rebuild you during the Marshall Plan. This is the Howard Lutnick point about tariffs. Like, we're going to get rid of all this shit. And hey, everybody, let's play on an equal playing field. But we're not fighting your wars for you this time.
Just look at the GDP growth rates of the United States, China, and Europe since the introduction of the euro. And get back to me. Get ready for parity and below. Get ready for 90 cent.
Get ready
euros.
For 60 cents. Get ready for 60 cents.
Well, if they try to administer their own affairs, like, this is the thing, like Europe, if you go back to the common market and like the coal, like sharing, coal production made a lot of sense, because coal was a multiple input. Coal was for heat in a lot of ways that I don't think Americans have ever seen, like distributed hot steam and water and like citywide heating and stuff. Like, there was lots of interesting systems. Like, as a Floridian, that's all Martian technology to me. I'm like, what do you mean? You got to make stuff hot? Why?
Why? It's like,
why would you do that? But apparently,
cold and get rid of the bugs.
But apparently, human beings can freeze to death. I've never seen it, but and obviously electricity and blah blah blah. So like when you had the common market, there were lots of things where Europe, it made sense, but like they don't even speak the same language. Okay, like I'm not being a redneck here, but like there's just boundaries and there's barriers to efficiency before the communism, and then you just throw in the idiotic, bureaucratic state that they seem to be addicted to. And it's like, all right, you guys want to have a competition who can make more stuff, the US or you? Like, all right, fine.
All right. Let's feeling froggy, take that leap. And I think this is part of, just to circle back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, which is, I think, why we're seeing the political unrest that we're seeing in Germany, because the German industrial class, which has, deeply embedded hooks in both wings of their uniparty, the SPD, nominally the Democrats, and the CDU, nominally the Republicans, are now screaming on both sides of it. We saw, so the news this morning was that Olaf Scholz, the outgoing chancellor, or the current chancellor, who's probably going to be ousted, finally opened up talks with Putin. At the same, this is 48 hours after Friedrich Merz, the head of the CDU, called for Putin to end the war in 24 hours, or we're sending missiles in for Ukraine to attack St. Petersburg. Can you not see the two-step here? The Uniparty is trying to stay in charge by bringing the CDU down.
They're trying to start a hot war, but they don't have the balls to do it. So it's all just farts.
But it's also grandstanding in order to bring the CDU, who's spiking in electoral. Right now they're polling about 34%.
I honestly don't really want to talk about Germany. I think we need to talk about like the sort of the natural thing to kind of close with here is talking about the regulatory state, and like where this all goes. Like all this histrionics on the left is that they're fearing that their permanent power structure is going to be dismantled. And it's going to be dismantled by executive authority, not by legislation, not by repeal of legislation, but by removing from US code regulations that have already been judged to be unconstitutional. And this comes back to Chevron, to the Loper Bright and other decisions. Now, I'm going to go on record that I need to, when Vivek was running for president and before, I did not take him seriously. I've even said some things about Vivek that were probably not very nice. And they were reduced to like, I don't take him seriously. He's not a serious person. Like his business experience is overblown, like blah, blah, blah. Whatever I said. But I will tell you, as time goes on, I see nothing justifying that opinion. Vivek is clearly, like, my biggest problem with him is I just didn't think he believed it. Right. I've been disabused of that notion. I believe he believes, and I think he's going to be a real asset to this administration. Elon is, I think Elon believes too, but Elon's a little too frenetic. I think Doge, whether it's got a hilarious name or not, I think it's going to be more about Vivek than Elon ultimately, because I think Vivek's actually, not distracted by running 5 companies that are always on the cusp of bankruptcy.
And being the 19th best Diablo 4 player in the world, by the way. Elon Musk is all of those things, and he's in the top 20 of Diablo 4 players in the world. Okay, like this is Elon Musk is exactly how you describe him. I think he's this frenetic person of immense energy, but he needs to have guardrails put around.
He needs Ritalin badly. And not to snort it, but to be told how much to take by a doctor. Anyway, but let me just get to the thing about, there was a post, and I think we should just literally put this in the show notes of a guy talking about what he basically quote tweeted Vivek, and I'm drilling down to the Vivek's tweet. It's like, here's a key point about our mission at Doge: eliminating bureaucratic regulations isn't a mere policy preference; it's a legal mandate from the U.S. Supreme Court. West Virginia versus EPA 2022 held agencies cannot decide major questions of economic or political significance without clear congressional authorization. This applies to thousands of rules that never were passed by Congress. In Loper Bright versus Raimondo 2024, the court ended Chevron deference, which means that agencies can't voice their own interpretations of law onto the people, blah, blah, blah. 18,000 federal cases cited Chevron deference, often to uphold these regulations, many of which are now null and void. In SEC versus Jarkissi 2024, SCOTUS restricted the use of administrative law judges by agencies. The same agency that wrote the rules should not be able to prosecute citizens in courts that it controls, and courts is in scare quotes. In Corner Post versus Board of Governors 24, SCOTUS held new businesses can challenge old regulations, greatly expanding the statute of limitations and opening many more rules up for scrutiny. So we shouldn't just look at rules passed in the last 4 years, but over the past 4 decades, paren, or more, close paren. Doge is ready to help the U.S. government conform to the U.S. Constitution once again. Elon Musk and I are ready to serve. You need to understand, like, for all the like almost overblown excitement that you and I had over the actual Loper Bright decision, and we did a couple podcasts on that, like the whatever we said, multiply that times like a power of 100.
Right.
I mean, like this tweet lays out 4 years of work. Okay. And none of it intersects with the legislative branch.
None of it.
All of it is 100%. And by the way, the other thing people need to understand, oh, but the Democrats will just sue to stop it. It's like, you can't really sue the literal enforcement and obeying a Supreme Court decision in an inferior court.
Right. Like,
oh, the Supreme Court ruled X, we're doing it, and then you're going to sue to stop us. Yes, there's a question of, are we making it up? Are we saying that, like, oh, we're going to go get rid of a department that has nothing to do with this decision? And that's a pretty quick review. That's like no, that's totally within the confines of this decision's scope. And it's just like, bye.
Right.
It's not like there aren't court things they can pull, but none of them are worth like the time of day of anybody involved, and they'll just be dead. So
they'll just be burning money that they shouldn't be burning.
So take what I just said about Vivek's tweet and imagine the panic amongst our lesser retards and Europe's greater retards. Because, I agree with your view of the sort of devolved, pyramidal command structure. Like our lesser retards I just don't know what to do. And so they're going to try to block this administration. They're going to try to block its formation. They're going to certainly try to block its action. But, I'm pretty confident that these razor thin legislative, majorities are not really going to be that big of an issue. I mean, I certainly would have preferred larger ones, mostly to nullify the Susan Collinses of the world from grandstanding. And I think our biggest risk in especially the first 2 years of Trump's term here are going to be defections and betrayals by Republicans doing things that they will vote with the Democrats on, not so much blocking appointments or whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Like rhino fuckery is what concerns me.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why we have to then start really thinking about everybody's MEQ. That's the manila envelope quotient. And who controls the balance on the MEQ of that equation. Yep.
Sounds vaguely familiar. I feel like someone might have said that somewhere.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth on this one for a while now. I'm grabbing it with both horns and I'm going with it. So there we are. All right, I think that's a good place to end then. Thanks, Dexter. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I mean it's going to be an interesting couple of years for sure, and we'll circle back when we know exactly who's going to be on the cabinet. I think we'll get some indication of who's going to get seated without incident, and I think the Gates story is going to be worth its own, analysis. And also, just thanks to everyone on Twitter who's been reaching out to me post our election night stuff. Appreciate all the kind words. And although this is the Gold Goats and Guns podcast, Tom and I are taping out a regular sit down between him and I, which we'll update later. And we'll probably put the first couple episodes, this would be an example. Perhaps this would be more of a too much in-depth example of what we would cover. We're viewing more like a weekly casual sit down of like just, this has been a pretty intense week. So maybe this is really kind of a template for what we're going to try to do, maybe a little shorter. Right. So keep your eyes open. We'll obviously post it. And the first couple episodes will be cross-posted with Gold Goats and Guns' main podcast. And again, thanks for all the kind words. And we hear you. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, he's absolutely correct. And I second the sentiment, and I'm looking forward to, because I think these are the best conversations I have every week. So we need to, well,
we don't, and we have them twice or 3 times. So we might as well just push record.
I might as well just push record. So there it is. All right. So with that, we're out. We'll everybody have a great weekend, and we'll be back soon.
Cheers.
Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 198 of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. I want to thank Dexter White for coming on and doing the thing, and hopefully we'll do it as often as the audience demands. So there it is. As always, you can follow the two of us at our blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can follow Dexter on Twitter at Dexter K. White. And you can sign up for the Patreon at Patreon/Gold Goats and Guns, where you can sign up for either the twice weekly market reports and private blogs, or the Gold Goats and Guns investor newsletter, our monthly newsletter, where we look ahead every month and really try to synthesize where things are headed, as well as give you a portfolio strategy for making sense of how to play all of these conflicting trends. So if that sounds good, do the thing. You know it. You know what to do. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.